Book 2, Chapter 2 of The Wanderer's Necklace by H. Rider Haggard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2. The Blind Caesar. Irene turned upon the eunuch as a she-lion turns upon some hunter that disturbs it from its prey. Noting the anger in her eyes, he fell back and prostrated himself. Thereupon she spoke to me as though his entry had interrupted her words. "Those are the orders, Captain Olaf. See that you forget none of them. Even if this proud eunuch, who dares to appear before me unannounced, bids you to do so, I shall hold you to account. Today I leave the city for a while for the baths whither I am sent. You must not accompany me because of the duty I have laid upon you here. When I return, be sure I'll summon you." And knowing that Stauracius could not see her from where he lay, for a moment she let her splendid eyes meet my own. In them there was a message I could not mistake. "The Augusta shall be obeyed," I answered, saluting. "May the Augusta return in health and glory and more beautiful than—" "Iduna the Fair," she broke in. "Captain, you are dismissed." Again I saluted, retreating from the presence backwards and staying to bow at each third step, as was the custom. The process was somewhat long, and as I reached the door I heard her say to Stauracius: "Hearken, you dog. If ever you dare to break in upon me thus again, you shall lose two things, your office and your head. What? May I not give secret orders to my trusted officer and not be spied upon by you? Now cease your grovellings and lead in these Persians, as you have been bribed to do." Passing through the silk-clad, bejewelled Persians, who waited in an antechamber with their slaves and gifts, I gained the great terrace of the palace which looked upon the sea. Here I found Martina leaning on the parapet. "Have you more of the Augusta's pearls about you, Olaf?" she asked mockingly, speaking over her shoulder. "Not I, Martina," I answered, halting beside her. "Indeed, I could have sworn otherwise, for they are perfumed, and I seem to catch their odour. When did you begin to use the royal scent upon that yellow beard of yours, Olaf? If any of us women did so, it would mean blows and exile. But perchance a captain of the guard may be forgiven." "I use no scents, girl, as you know well. Yet it is true that these rooms reek of them, and they cling to armour." "Yes, and still more to hair. Well, what gift had my mistress for you today?" "A commission to guard certain prisoners, Martina." "Ah, have you read it yet? When you do, I think you'll find that it names you governor of the jail, which is a high office, carrying much pay and place. You are in good favour, Olaf, and I hope that when you come to greatness you will not forget Martina. It is I who put it into a certain mind to give you this commission as the only man that could be trusted in the court." "I do not forget a friend, Martina," I answered. "That is your reputation, Olaf. Oh, what a road is opening to your feet! Yet I doubt you'll not walk it, being too honest, or if you do, that it will lead you, not to glory, but a grave." "Mayhap, Martina, and to speak truth, a grave is the only quiet place in Constantinople. Mayhap, too, it hides the only real glory." "That's what we Christians say. It would be strange if you, who are not a Christian, alone should believe and keep the saying. Oh," she went on with passion, "we are but shams and liars, whom God must hate. Well, I go to make ready for this journey to the baths." "How long do you stay there?" I asked. "The course of waters takes a month. Less than that time does not serve to clear the Augusta's skin and restore her shape to the lines of youth, which it begins to need, though doubtless you do not think so. You were named to come as her officer of the person. But, Olaf, this other business rose up of a new governor for the jail in which the Caesars and nobilissimi are confined. I saw a chance for you in it, who, although you have served all these years, have had no real advancement, and mentioned your name, at which the Augusta leapt. To tell the truth, Olaf, I was not sure that you would wish to be captain of the guard at the baths. Was I right or was I wrong? I think you were right, Martina. Baths are idle places where folk drift into trouble, and I follow duty. Martina, may I say it to you? You are a good woman and a kind. I pray that those gods of yours whom you worship may bless you. You pray in vain, Olaf, for that they will never do. Indeed, I think they have cursed me. Then suddenly she burst into tears and, turning, went away. I, too, went away somewhat bewildered, for much had happened to me that morning which I found it hard to understand. Why had the Augusta kissed me? I took it that this was some kind of imperial jest. It was known that I kept aloof from women, and she may have desired to see what I should do when an Augusta kissed me, and then to make a mock of me. I had heard that she had done as much with others. Well, let that be, since Stauracius, who always feared lest a new favourite should slip between him and power, had settled the matter for me, for which I blessed Stauracius, although at the moment, being but a man, I had cursed him. And now why did Martina, the little dark Martina with the kind face and the watchful beady eyes, like to those of a robin in our northern lands, speak as she had done, and then burst into tears? A doubt struck me, but I, who was never vain, pushed it aside. I did not understand, and of what use was it to try to interpret the meaning of moods of women? My business was war, or at the moment the service that has to do with war, not women. Wars had brought me to the rank I held, though, strangely enough, of those wars I can recall nothing now. They have vanished from my vision. To wars I also looked to advance me in the future, who was no courtier but a soldier whom circumstances had brought to court. Well, thanks to Martina, as she said, or to some caprice of the Empress, I had a new commission that was of more worth to me than her random kisses, and I would go to read it. Read it I did in the little private room upon the palace wall which was mine as captain of Augusta's guard, though being written in Greek I found this difficult. Martina had spoken truly. I was made the governor of the state prison, with all authority, including that of life and death should emergency arise. Moreover, this governorship gave me the rank of a general, with a general's pay, also such pickings as I chose to take. In short, from captain of the guard, suddenly I had become a great man in Constantinople, one with whom even Stauracius and others like him would have to reckon, especially as his signature appeared upon the commission beneath that of the Empress. Whilst I was wondering what I should do next, a trumpet blew upon the ramparts, and a Northman of my company entered, saluted, and said that I was summoned. I went out, and there before me stood a dazzling band that bowed humbly to me, whom yesterday they would have passed without notice. Their captain, a smooth-faced Greek, came forward, and addressing me as general, said the imperial orders were that he was to escort me to the state jail. For what purpose? I asked, since it had come to my mind that Irene might have changed her fancy and issued another kind of commission. As its general and governor, illustrious, he replied. Then I will lead, I answered. Do you follow behind me? Thus that vision ends. In the next, I see myself dwelling in some stately apartments that formed the antechambers to the great prison. This prison, which was situated not far from the Forum of Constantine, covered a large area of ground, which included a garden where the prisoners were allowed to walk. It was surrounded by a double wall, with an outer and an inner moat, the outer dry and the inner filled with water. There were double gates also, and by them guard towers. Moreover, I see a little yard with posts in it, where prisoners were scourged, and a small and horrible room furnished with a kind of wooden bed to which they were bound for the punishment of the putting out of their eyes and the slitting of their tongues. In front of this room was a block where those condemned to death were sometimes executed. There were many prisoners, not common felons, but people who had been taken for reasons of state or sometimes of religion. Perhaps in all they numbered 100 men, and with them a few women who had a quarter to themselves. Besides the jailers, 80 guards were stationed there night and day, and of all of these I was in command. Before I had held my office 3 days, I found that Irene had appointed me to it with good reason. It happened thus. The most of the prisoners were allowed to receive presents of food and other things sent to them by their friends. All these presents were supposed to be inspected by the officer in charge of the prison. This rule, which had been much neglected, I enforced again, with the result that I made some strange discoveries. Thus, on the 3rd day there came a magnificent offering of figs for the Cæsars and Nobilissimi, the brothers-in-law of Irene, and the uncles of the young Emperor Constantine, her son. These figs were being carried past me formally. Then something about the appearance of one of them excited my suspicion. I took it and offered it to the jailer who carried the basket. He looked frightened, shook his head, and said, "General, I touch no fruit." "Indeed," I answered. "That is strange, since I thought that I saw you eating of it yesterday." "Aye, General," he replied. "The truth is that I ate too much." Making no answer, I went to the window and threw the fig to a long-tailed, tame monkey which was chained to a post in the yard without. It caught it and ate greedily. "Do not go away, friend," I said to the jailer, who was trying to depart while my back was turned. "I have questions that I would ask you." So I spoke to him about other matters, and all the while watched the monkey. Soon I saw that it was ill at ease. It began to tear at its stomach and to whimper like a child. Then it foamed at the mouth, was seized with convulsions, and within a quarter of an hour, by the water clock, was dead. "It would seem that those figs are poisoned, friend," I said, "and therefore it is fortunate for you that you ate too much fruit yesterday. Now, man, what do you know of this matter?" "Nothing, sir," he answered, falling on his knees. "I swear to you by Christ, nothing. Only I doubted. The fruits were brought by a woman whom I thought that once I had seen in the household of the Augustus Constantine, and I knew—" and he paused. "Well, what did you know, man? It would be the best to tell me quickly, who have power here." "I knew, sir, what all the world knows, that Constantine would be rid of his uncles whom he fears, though they are maimed. No more, I swear it, no more." "Perhaps before the Augusta returns you may remember something more," I said. "Therefore I will not judge your case at present. Ho, guard, come hither." As he heard the soldiers stirring without in answer to my summons, the man, who was unarmed, looked about his desperately. Then he sprang at the fruit, and seizing a fig, strove to thrust it into his mouth. But I was too quick for him, and within a few seconds the soldiers had him fast. "Shut this man in a safe dungeon," I said. "Treat and feed him well, but search him. See also that he does himself no harm, and that none speak with him. Then forget all this business." "What charge must be entered in the book, General?" asked the officer, saluting. "A charge of stealing figs that belonged to the Cæsar Nicephorus and his royal brethren," I answered, and looked through the window. He followed my glance, saw the poor monkey lying dead, and started. "All shall be done," he said, and the man was led away. When he had gone, I sent for the physician of the jail, whom I knew to be trustworthy, since I had appointed him myself. Without telling him anything, I bade him examine and preserve the figs, and also dissect the body of the monkey to discover why it died. He bowed and went away with the fruit. A while later he returned and showed me an open fig. In the heart of it was a pinch of white powder. "What is it?" I asked. "The deadliest poison that is known, General. See, the stalk has been drawn out, the powder blown in through a straw, and then the stalk replaced." "Ah," I said, "that is clever, but not quite clever enough. They have mixed the stalks. I noted that the purple fig had the stalk of a green fig, and that is why I tried it on the monkey." "You observe well, General." "Yes, physician, I observe. I learned that when, as a lad, I hunted game in the far north. Also, I learned to keep silent, since noise frightens game. Do you as much?" "Have no fear," he answered, and went about his business with the dead monkey. When he had gone, I thought a while. Then I rose and went to the chapel of the prison, or rather to a place whence I could see those in the chapel without being seen. This chapel was situated in a gloomy crypt, lighted only with oil lamps that hung from the massive pillars and arches. The day was the Sabbath of the Christians, and when I entered the little secret hollow in the walls, the sacrament was being administered to certain of the prisoners. Truly, it was a sad sight, for the ministering priest was none other than the Cæsar Nicephorus, the eldest of the Emperor's uncles, who had been first ordained in order that he might be unfit to sit upon the throne, and afterwards blinded, as I have told. He was a tall, pale man, with an uncertain mouth and a little pointed chin, apparently between 40 and 50 years of age, and his face was made dreadful by 2 red hollows where the eyes should have been. Yet, notwithstanding this disfigurement and his tonsured crown, and the broidered priest's robes which hung upon him awkwardly as he stumbled through the words of his office, to this poor victim there still seemed to cling some air of royal birth and bearing. Being blind, he could not see to administer the element, and therefore his hand was guided by one of his imperial brethren, who also had been made a priest. The tongue of this priest had been slit, but now and again he gibbered some direction into the ear of Nicephorus. By the altar, watching all, sat a stern-faced monk, the confessor of the Cæsars and of the nobilissimi, who was put there to spy upon them. I followed the rite to its end, observing these unhappy prisoners seeking from the mystery of their faith the only consolation that remained to them. Many of them were men innocent of any crime, save that of adherence to some fallen cause, political or religious. Victims were they, not sinners, to be released by death alone. I remember that as the meaning of the scene came home to me, I recalled the words of Irene, who had said that she believed this world to be a hell, and found weight in them. At length, able to bear no more, I left my hiding place and went into the garden behind the chapel. Here, at least, were natural things. Here flowers tended by the prisoners bloomed as they might have done in some less accursed spot. Here the free birds sang and nested in the trees. For what to them were the high surrounding walls? I sat myself down upon a seat in the shade. Presently, as I had expected, Nicephorus, the priest Cæsar, and his 4 brethren came into the garden. 2 of them led the blind man by the hand, and the other 2 clung close to him, for all these unfortunates loved each other dearly. The 4 with the split tongues gabbled in his ears, Now and again, when he could catch or guess at the meaning of a word, he answered the speaker gently, or the others, seeing that he had not understood them aright, painfully tried to explain the error. Oh, it was a piteous thing to see and hear. My gorge rose against the young brute of an emperor and his councillors who, for ambition's sake, had wrought this horrible crime. Little did I know then that ere long their fate would be his own, and that a mother's hand would deal it out to him. They caught sight of me seated beneath the tree, and chattered like startled starlings, till at length Nicephorus understood. "What say you, dear brothers?" he asked. "That the new governor of the prison is seated yonder." "Well, why should we fear him? He has been here but a little while, yet he has shown himself very kind to us. Moreover, he is a man of the North, no treacherous Greek, and the men of the North are brave and upright. Once, when I was a free prince, I had some of them in my service, and I loved them well. Our nephew, the Emperor, offered a large sum to a Northman to blind or murder me, but he would not do it, and was dismissed from the service of the Empire because he spoke his mind and prayed his heathen gods to bring a like fate upon Constantine himself. Lead me to this governor. I would talk with him." So they brought Nicephorus to me, though doubtfully, and when he was near I rose from my seat and saluted him. Thereon they all gabbled again with their split tongues, till at length he understood and flushed with pleasure. "General Olaf," he said to me, "I thank you for your courtesy to a poor prisoner, forgotten by God and cruelly oppressed by man. General Olaf, the promise is of little worth, but if ever it should be in my power, I will remember this kindness, which pleases me more than did the shouting of the legions in the short day of my prosperity." "Sir," I answered, "whatever happens, I shall remember your words, which are more to me than any honours kings can bestow. Now, sir, I will ask your royal brethren to fall back, as I wish to speak with you." Nicephorus made a sign with his hand, and the four half-dumb men, all of whom resembled him strangely, especially in the weakness of their mouths and chins, obeyed. Bowing to me in a stately fashion, they withdrew, leaving us alone. "Sir," I said, "I would warn you that you have enemies whom you may not suspect, for my duty here, wherewith I was charged by the Augusta, is not to oppress, but to protect you and your imperial brothers." Then I told him the story of the poisoned figs. When he had heard it, the tears welled from his hollow eyes and ran down his pale cheeks. "Constantine, my brother Leo's son, has done this," he said, "for never will he rest until all of us are in the grave. He is cruel because he fears you, O Nicephorus, and it is said that your ambition has given him cause to fear." "Once, General, that was true," the prince replied. "Once, foolishly, I did aspire to rule, but it is long ago. Now they have made a priest of me, and I seek peace only. Can I and my brother help it if, mutilated though we are, some still wish to use us against the Emperor? I tell you that Irene herself is at the back of them. She would set us on high that afterwards she may throw us down and crush us." "I am her servant, Prince, and may not listen to such talk, who know only that she seeks to protect you from your enemies, and for that reason has placed me here, it seems not in vain. If you would continue to live, I warn you and your brethren to fly from plots and to be careful of what you eat and drink." "I do not desire to live, General," he answered. "Oh, that I might die! Would that I might die!" "Death is not difficult to find, Prince," I replied, and left him. These may seem hard words, but be it remembered, I was no Christian then, but a heathen man. To see one who had been great and fallen from his greatness, one whom fortune had deserted utterly, whining at fate like a fretful child, and yet afraid to seek his freedom, moved me to contempt as well as to pity. Therefore I spoke the words. Yet all the rest of that day they weighed upon my mind, for I knew well how I should have interpreted them were I in this poor Cæsar's place. So heavily did they weigh that during the following night an impulse drew me from my bed and caused me to visit the cells in which these princes were imprisoned. 4 of them were dark and silent, but in that of Nicephorus burned a light. I listened at the door, and through the key place heard that the prisoner within was praying and sobbing as he prayed. Then I went away, but when I reached the end of the long passage, something drew me back again. It was as though a hand I could not see were guiding me. I returned to the door of the cell, and now through it heard choking sounds. Quickly I shot the bolts and unlocked it with my master key. This was what I saw within. To a bar of the window place was fastened such a rope as monks wear for a girdle. At the end of the rope was a noose, and in that noose the head of Nicephorus. There he hung, struggling. His hands had gripped the rope above his head, for, though he had sought death, at the last he tried to escape him. Of such stuff was Nicephorus made. Yet it was too late, or would have been, for as I entered the place his hand slipped from the thin cord which tightened round his throat, choking him. My sword was at my side. Drawing it with a blow, I cut the rope and caught him in my arms. Already he was swooning, but I poured water over his face, and, as his neck remained unbroken, he recovered his breath and senses. "What play is this, Prince?" I asked. "One that you taught me, General," he answered painfully. "You said that death could be found. I went to seek him, but at the last I feared. Oh, I tell you that when I thrust away that stool, my blind eyes were opened, and I saw the fires of hell and the hands of devils grasping at my soul to plunge it into them. Blessings be on you who have saved me from those fires." And seizing my hand, he kissed it. "Do not thank me," I said, "but thank the God you worship, for I think that he must have put it into my mind to visit you tonight. Now swear to me by that God that you will attempt such a deed no more. For if you will not swear, then you must be fettered." Then he swore so fervently by his Christ that I was sure he would never break the oath. After he had sworn, I told him how I could not rest because of the strange fears which oppressed me. "Oh," he said, "without doubt it was God who sent his angel to you, that I might be saved from the most dreadful of all sins. Without doubt it was God, who knows you although you do not know him." After this he fell upon his knees, and having untied the cut rope from the window bars, I left him. Now I tell this story because it has to do with my own, for it was these words of the prince that first turned me to the study of the Christian faith. Indeed, had they never been spoken, I believe that I should have lived and died a heathen man. Hitherto I had judged of that faith by the works of those who practised it in Constantinople, and found it wanting. Now, however, I was sure that some power from above us had guided me to the chamber of Nicephorus in time to save his life, me, who, had he died, in a sense would have been guilty of his blood. For had he not been driven to the deed by my bitter, mocking words, it may be said that this would have mattered little, that he might as well have died by his own hand as be taken to Athens, there to perish with his brethren, whether naturally or by murder I do not know. But who can judge of such secret things? Without doubt the sufferings of Nicephorus had a purpose, as have all our sufferings. He was kept alive for reasons known to his Maker, though not to man. Here I will add that of this unhappy Cæsar and his brethren I remember little more. Dimly I seem to recollect that during my period of office some attack was made upon the prison by those who would have put the prince to death, but that I discovered the plot through the jailer who had introduced the poisoned figs, and defeated it with ease, thereby gaining much credit with Irene and her ministers. If so, of this plot history says nothing. All it tells of these princes is that afterwards a mob haled them to the cathedral of St. Sophia, and there proclaimed Nicephorus emperor. But they were taken again, and at last shipped to Athens, where they vanished from the sight of men. God rest their tortured souls, for they were more sinned against than sinning. End of chapter 2. Book 2, Chapter 3 of The Wanderer's Necklace by H. Rider Haggard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3. Mother and Son. The next vision of this Byzantine life of mine that rises before me is that of a great round building crowned with men clad in bishops' robes. At least they wore mitres, and each of them had a crooked pastoral staff in which most cases was carried by an attendant monk. Some debate was in progress, or rather raging. Its subject seemed to be as to whether images should or should not be worshipped in churches. It was a furious thing, that debate. One party to it were called iconoclasts. That was the party which did not like images, and I think the other party were called orthodox, but of this I am not sure. So furious was it that I, the general and governor of the prison, had been commanded by those in authority to attend, in order to prevent violence. The beginnings of what happened I do not remember. What I do remember is that the anti-iconoclasts, the party to which the Empress Irene belonged, that was therefore the fashionable sect, being, as it seemed to me, worsted in argument, fell back on violence. There followed a great tumult, in which the spectators took part, and the strange sight was seen of priests and their partisans, and even of bishops themselves, falling upon their adversaries and beating them with whatever weapon was to hand. Yes, even with their pastoral staves. It was a wonderful thing to behold these ministers of the Christ of peace belabouring each other with pastoral staves. The party that advocated the worship of images was the more numerous and had the greater number of adherents, and therefore those who thought otherwise were defeated. A few of them were dragged out into the street and killed by the mob which waited there, and more were wounded, notwithstanding all that I and the guards could do to protect them. Among the iconoclasts was a gentle-faced old man with a long beard, one of the bishops from Egypt, who was named Barnabas. He had said little in the debate, which lasted for several days, and when he spoke his words were full of charity and kindness. Still, the image faction hated him, and when the final tumult began, some of them set upon him. Indeed, one brawny, dark-faced bishop, I think it was he of Antioch, rushed at Barnabas, and before I could thrust him back, broke a jewelled staff upon his head, while other priests tore his robe from neck to shoulder and spat in his face. At last the riot was quelled. The dead were borne away, and orders came to me that I was to convey Barnabas to the state prison, if he still lived, together with some others, of whom I remember nothing. So thither I took Barnabas, and there, with the help of the prison physician, he to whom I had given the poisoned figs, and the dead monkey to be examined, I nursed him back to life and health. His illness was long, for one of the blows which he had received crippled him, and during it we talked much together. He was a very sweet-natured man and holy, a native of Britain, whose father or grandfather had been a Dane, and therefore there was a tie between us. In his youth he was a soldier. Having been taken prisoner in some war, he came to Italy, where he was ordained a priest at Rome. Afterwards he was sent as a missionary to Egypt, where he was appointed the head of a monastery, and in the end elected to a bishopric. But he had never forgotten the Danish tongue, which his parents taught him as a child, and so we were able to talk together in that language. Now it would seem that since that night when the Caesar Nicephorus strove to hang himself, I had obtained and studied a copy of the Christian Scriptures. How, I do not know, and therefore was able to discuss these matters with Barnabas the bishop. Of our arguments I remember nothing, save that I pointed out to him that whereas the tree seemed to me to be very good, its fruits were vile beyond imagination, and I instanced the horrible tumult when he had been wounded almost to death, not by common men, but by the very leaders of the Christians. He answered that these things must happen, that Christ himself had said he came to bring not peace, but a sword, and that only through war and struggle would the last truth be reached. The spirit was always good, he added, but the flesh was always vile. These deeds were those of the flesh, which passed away, but the spirit remained pure and immortal. The end of it was that under the teaching of the holy Barnabas, saint and martyr, for afterwards he was murdered by the followers of the false prophet Mahomet, I became a Christian and a new man. Now at length I understood what grace it was that had given me courage to offer battle to the heathen god, Odin, and to smite him down. Now I saw also where shone the light which I had been seeking these many years. Aye, and I clasped that light to my bosom to be my lamp in life and death. So a day came when my beloved master Barnabas, who would allow no delay in this matter, baptized me in his cell with water taken from his drinking vessel, charging me to make public profession before the church when opportunity should arise. It was just at this time that Irene returned from the baths, and I sent to her a written report of all that had happened at the prison since I had been appointed its governor. Also I prayed that if it were her will I might be relieved of my office, as it was one which did not please me. A few days later, while I sat in my chamber at the prison writing a paper concerning a prisoner who had died, the porter at the gate announced that a messenger from the Augusta wished to see me. I bade him show in the messenger, and presently there entered no chamberlain or eunuch, but a woman wrapped in a dark cloak. When the man had gone and the door was shut, she threw off the cloak, and I saw that my visitor was Martina, the favourite waiting lady of the Empress. We greeted each other warmly, who were always friends, and I asked her tidings. My tidings are, Olaf, that the waters have suited the Augusta very well. She has lost several pounds in weight, and her skin is now like that of a young child. All health to the Augusta, I said, laughing, but you have not come here to tell me of the state of the royal skin. What next, Martina? This, Olaf. The Empress has read your report with her own eyes, which is a rare thing for her to do. She said she wished to see whether or no you could write Greek. She is much pleased with the report, and told Stauracius in my presence that she had done well in choosing you for your office while she was absent from the city, since thereby she had saved the lives of the Caesars and nobilissimi, desiring as she does that these princes should be kept alive, at any rate for the present. She accedes also to your prayer, and will relieve you of your office as soon as a new governor can be chosen. You are to return to guard her person, but with your rank of general confirmed. That is all good news, Martina. So good that I wonder what sting is hidden in all this honey. That you will find out presently, Olaf. One I can warn you of, however, the sting of jealousy. Advancement such as yours draws eyes to you, not all of them in love. I nodded, and she went on. Meantime, your star seems to shine very bright indeed. One might almost say that the Augusta worshipped it, At least she talks of you to me continually, and once or twice was in half a mind to send for you to the baths. Indeed, had it not been for reasons of state connected with your prisoners, I think she would have done so." "Ah," I said, "now I think I begin to feel another sting in the honey." "Another sting in the honey? Nay, nay. You mean a divine perfume, an essence of added sweetness, a flavour of the flowers on Mount Ida. Why, Olaf, if I were your enemy, as I dare say I shall be some day, for often we learn to hate those whom we have rather liked, your head and your shoulders might bid good-bye to each other for such words as those." "Perhaps, Martina. And if they did, I do not know what it would greatly matter now." "Not greatly matter? When you are driving at full gallop along Fortune's road to Fame's temple with an empress for your charioteer? Are you blind or mad, Olaf, or both? And what do you mean by your 'now'? Olaf, something has happened to you since last we met. Have you fallen in love with some fair prisoner in this hateful place and been repulsed? Such a fool as you are might take refusal even from a captive in his own hands. At least you are different." "Yes, Martina, something has happened to me. I have become a Christian." "Oh, Olaf, now I see that you are not a fool, as I thought, but very clever. Why, only yesterday the Augusta said to me, it was after she had read that report of yours, that if you were but a Christian, she would be minded to lift you high indeed. But as you remained the most obstinate of heathens, she did not see how it could be done without causing great trouble." "Now, I wish one could be a Christian within and remain a pagan without," I answered grimly. "Though, alas, that may not be. Martina, do you not understand that it was for no such reasons as these that I kissed the cross? That in doing so I sought not fortune, but to be its servant?" "By the Saints, you'll be tonsured next, and ill enough it would suit you," she exclaimed. "Remember, if things grow too difficult, you can always be tonsured, Olaf. Only then you will have to give up the hope of that lady who wears the other half of the necklace somewhere. I don't mean Irene's sham half, but the real one. Oh, stop blushing and stammering. I know the story, and all about Iduna the Fair also. An exalted person told it me, and so did you, although you were not aware that you had done so, for you are not one who can keep a secret to himself. May all the guardian angels help that necklace lady if ever she should meet another lady whom I will not name. And now, why do you talk so much? Are you learning to preach or what? If you really do mean to become a monk, Olaf, there is another thing you must give up, and that is war, except of the kind which you saw at the council the other day. God above us, what a sight it would be to see you battering another bishop with a hook-shaped staff over a question of images, or the two natures. I should be sorry for that bishop, but you haven't told me who converted you." "Barnabas of Egypt," I said. "Oh, I hoped that it had been a lady saint. The story would have been so much more interesting to the court. Well, our imperial mistress does not like Barnabas, because he does not like images, and that may be a sting in her honey. But perhaps she will forgive him for your sake. You'll have to worship images." "What do I care about images? It is the spirit that I seek, Martina, and all these things are nothing." "You are thorough as usual, Olaf, and jump farther than you can see. Well, be advised and say naught for or against images. As they have no meaning for you, what can it matter if they are or are not there? Leave them to the blind eyes and little minds. And now I must be gone, who can listen to your gossip no longer. Oh, I had forgotten my message. The Augusta commands that you shall wait on her this evening immediately after she has supped. Hear and obey." Having delivered this formal mandate, to neglect which meant imprisonment, or worse, she threw her cloak about her and, with a wondering glance at my face, opened the door and went. At the hour appointed, or rather somewhat before it, I attended at the private apartments of the palace. Evidently I was expected, for one of the chamberlains, on seeing me, bowed and bade me be seated, then left the anteroom. Presently the door opened again, and through it came Martina, clad in her white official robe. "You are early, Olaf," she said, "like a lover who keeps a tryst. Well, it is always wise to meet good fortune halfway. But why do you come clad in full armour? It is not the custom to wait thus upon the Empress at this hour when you are off duty." "I thought that I was on duty, Martina." "Then, as usual, you thought wrong. Take off that armour. She says that the sight of it always makes her feel cold after supper. I say take it off, or if you cannot, I will help you." So the mail was removed, leaving me clad in my plain blue tunic and hose. "Would you have me come before the Empress thus?" I asked. By way of answer she clapped her hands and bade the eunuch who answered the signal to bring a certain robe. He went and presently reappeared with a wondrous garment of silk broidered with gold, such as nobles of high rank wore at festivals. This robe, which fitted as though it had been made for me, I put on, though I liked the look of it little. Martina would have had me even remove my sword, but I refused, saying, "Except at the express order of the Empress, I and my sword are not parted." Well, she said nothing about the sword, Olaf, so let it be. All she said was that I must be careful that the robe matched the colour of the necklace you wear. She cannot bear colours which jar upon each other, especially by lamplight. "Am I a man," I asked angrily, "or a beast being decked for sacrifice?" "Fie, Olaf. Have you not yet forgotten your heathen talk? Remember, I pray you, that you are now a Christian in a Christian land." "I thank you for reminding me of it," I replied, and that moment a chamberlain, entering hurriedly, commanded my presence. "Good luck to you, Olaf," said Martina as I followed him. "Be sure to tell me the news later, or tomorrow." Then the chamberlain led me, not into the audience hall as I had expected, but to the private imperial dining chamber. Here, reclining upon couches in the old Roman fashion, one on either side of a narrow table on which stood fruits and flagons of rich-hued Greek wine, were the two greatest people in the world, the Augusta Irene and the Augustus Constantine, her son. She was wonderfully apparelled in a low-cut garment of white silk, over which fell a mantle of the imperial purple, and I noted that on her dazzling bosom hung that necklace of emerald beetles separated by golden shells which she had caused to be copied from my own. On her fair hair that grew low upon her forehead and was parted in the middle, she wore a diadem of gold in which were set emeralds to match the beetles of the necklace. The Augustus was arrayed in the festal garments of a Caesar, also covered with a purple cloak. He was a heavy-faced and somewhat stupid-looking youth, dark-haired like his father and uncles, but having large, blue, and not unkindly eyes. From his flushed face I gathered that he had drunk well of the strong Greek wine, and from the sullen look about his mouth that, as was common, he had been quarrelling with his mother. I stood at the end of the table and saluted first to the Empress and then the Emperor. "Who's this?" he asked, glancing at me. "General Olaf of my guard," she answered, "Governor of the State prison. You remember, You wished me to send for him to settle the point as to which we were arguing. Oh, yes. Well, General Olaf, of my mother's guard, have you not been told that you should salute the Augustus before the Augusta? Sire, I answered humbly, I have heard nothing of that matter, but in the land where I was bred, it was taught that if a man and a woman were together, I must always bow first to the woman and then to the man. Well said, exclaimed the Empress, clapping her hands. But the Emperor answered, Doubtless your mother taught you that, not your father. Next time you enter the imperial chamber, be pleased to forget the lesson and to remember that emperors and empresses are not men and women. Sire, I answered, as you command, I will remember that emperors and empresses are not men and women, but emperors and empresses. At these words, the Augustus began to scowl, but changing his mind, laughed, as did his mother. He filled a gold cup with wine and pushed it towards me, saying, Drink to us, soldier, for after you have done so, our wits may be better matched. I took the cup and, holding it, said, I pledge your Imperial Majesties, who shine upon the world like twin stars in the sky. All hail to your Majesties. And I drank, but not too deep. You are clever, growled the Augustus. Well, keep the cup. You've earned it. Yet drain it first, man. You have scarce wet your lips. Do you fear it is poison, as you say yonder fruits are? And he pointed to a side table, where stood a jar of glass, in which were those very figs that had been sent to the princes in the prison. The cup you give is mine, interrupted Irene. Still, my servant is welcome to the gift. It shall be sent to your quarters, General. A soldier has no need of such gauds, your Majesties, I began, when Constantine, who, while we spoke, swallowed another draught of the strong wine, broke in angrily. May I not give a cup of gold, but you must claim it? I, to whom the Empire and all its wealth belong. Snatching up the beaker, he dashed it to the floor, spilling the wine, of which I, who wished to keep my head cool, was glad. Have done, he went on in his drunken rage. Shall the Caesars huckster over a piece of worked gold like Jews in a market? Give me those figs, man. I'll settle the matter of this poison. I brought the jar of figs, and bowing, set them down before him. That they were the same I knew, for the glass was labelled in my own writing and in that of the physician. He cut away the sealed parchment which was stretched over the mouth of the jar. Now hearken you, Olaf, he said. It is true that I ordered fruits to be sent to that fool, Caesar, my uncle, because the last time I saw him Nicephorus prayed me for it, and I was willing to do him a pleasure. But that I ordered the fruit to be poisoned, as my mother says, is a lie, and may God curse the tongue that spoke it. I will show you that it was a lie, and plunging his hand into the spirit of the jar, he drew out 2 of the figs. Now, he went on, waving them about in a half-drunken fashion, this General Olaf of yours says that these are the same figs which were sent to the Caesar. I mean the blind priest, Father Nicephorus. Don't you, Olaf? Yes, sire, I answered. They were placed in that bottle in my presence and sealed with my seal. Well, those figs were sent by me, and this Olaf tells us they are poisoned. I'll show him, and you too, Mother, that they are not poison, for I will eat one of them. Now I looked at the Augusta, but she sat silent, her arms folded on her white bosom, her handsome face turned as it were to stone. Constantine lifted the fig towards his loose mouth. Again I looked at the Augusta. Still she sat there like a statue, and it came into my mind that it was her purpose to allow this wine-bemused man to eat the fig. Then I acted. Augustus, I said, you must not touch that fruit. and stepping forward, I took it from his hand. He sprang to his feet and began to revile me. "You watchdog of the North," he shouted, "do you dare to say to the Emperor that he shall not do this or that? By all the images my mother worships, I'll have you whipped through the circus." "That you will never do," I answered, for my free blood boiled at the insult. "I tell you, sire," I went on, leaving out certain words which I meant to speak, "that the fig is poisoned. And I tell you that you lie, you heathen savage. See here, either you eat that fig or I do, so that we may know who speaks the truth. If you won't, I will. Now obey, or by Christ, tomorrow you shall be shorter by a head." "The Augustus is pleased to threaten, which is unnecessary," I remarked. "If I eat the fig, will the Augustus swear to leave the rest of them uneaten?" "Aye," he answered with a hiccough, "for then I shall know the truth, and for the truth I live, though," he added, "I haven't found it yet." "And if I do not eat it, will the Augustus do so?" "By the Holy Blood, yes. I'll eat a dozen of them. Am I one to be hectored by a woman and a barbarian? Eat, or I eat." "Good, sire. It is better that a barbarian should die than that the world should lose its glorious emperor. I eat. And when you are, as I soon shall be, as will happen even to an emperor, may my blood lie heavy on your soul, the blood which I give to save your life." Then I lifted the fig to my lips. Before it ever touched them, with a motion swift as that of a panther springing on its prey, Irene had leapt from her couch and dashed the fruit from my hand. She turned upon her son. "What kind of a thing are you," she asked, "who would suffer a brave man to poison himself that he may save your worthless life? Oh, God, what have I done that I should have given birth to such a hound? Whoever poisoned them, these fruits are poisoned, as has been proved, and can be proven again, yes, and shall be. I tell you that if Olaf had tasted one of them by now, he would have been dead or dying." Constantine drank another cup of wine, which, oddly enough, seemed to sober him for the moment. "I find all this strange," he said heavily. "You, my mother, would have suffered me to eat the fig which you declare is poisoned, a matter whereof you may know something. But when the General Olaf offers to eat it in my place, with your own royal hand you dash it from his lips, as he dashed it from mine. And there is another thing which is still more strange. This Olaf, who also says the figs are poisoned, offered to eat one of them if I promised I would not do so, which means, if he is right, that he offered to give his life for mine. Yet I have done nothing for him except call him hard names. And as he is your servant, he has nothing to look for from me if I should win the fight with you at last. Now, I have heard much talk of miracles, but this is the only one I have ever seen. Either Olaf is a liar or he is a great man and a saint. He says, I am told, that the monkey which ate one of those figs died. Well, I never thought of it before, but there are more monkeys in the palace. Indeed, one lives on the terrace near by, for I fed it this afternoon. We'll put the matter to the proof and learn of what stuff this Olaf is really made." On the table stood a silver bell, and as he spoke he struck it. A chamberlain entered and was ordered to bring in the monkey. He departed, and with incredible swiftness the beast and its keeper arrived. It was a large animal of the baboon tribe, famous throughout the palace for its tricks. Indeed, on entering, at a word from the man who led it, it bowed to all of us. "Give your beast these," said the Emperor, handing the keeper several of the figs. The baboon took the fruits, and, having sniffed at them, put them aside. Then the keeper fed it with some sweetmeats, which it caught and devoured, and presently, when its fears were allayed, threw it one of the figs, which it swallowed, doubtless thinking it was a sweetmeat. A minute or two later it began to show signs of distress, and shortly afterwards died in convulsions. "Now," said Irene, "now do you believe, my son?" "Yes," he answered. "I believe that there is a saint in Constantinople. Sir Saint, I salute you. You have saved my life, and if it should come my way, by your brother saints, I'll save yours, although you are my mother's servant." So speaking, he drank off yet another cup of wine and reeled from the room. The keeper, at a sign from Irene, lifted up the body of the dead ape and also left the chamber, weeping as he went, for he had loved this beast. End of chapter 3. Book 2, Chapter 4 of The Wanderer's Necklace by H. Rider Haggard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4. Olaf offers his sword. The Emperor had gone, drunk. The ape had gone, dead. And its keeper had gone, weeping. Irene and I alone were left in that beautiful place, with the wine-stained table on which stood the jar of poisoned figs and the bent golden cup lying on the marble floor. She sat upon the couch, looking at me with a kind of amazement in her eyes, and I stood before her at attention, as does a soldier on duty. "I wonder why he did not send for one of my servants to eat those figs, Stauracius, for instance," she mused, adding with a little laugh, "Well, if he had, there are some whom I could have spared better than that poor ape, which at times I used to feed. It was an honest creature, that ape, the only creature in the palace that would not rub its head in the dust before the Augusta. Ah, now I remember. It always hated Constantine, for when he was a child he used to tease it with a stick, getting beyond the length of its chain and striking it. But one day, as he passed too near, it caught him and buffeted him on the cheek and tore out some of his hair. He wanted to kill it then, but I forbade him. Yet he has never forgotten it, he who never does forget anything he hates, and that is why he sent for the poor beast. The Augusta will remember that the Augustus did not know that the figs were poisoned. The Augusta is sure that the Augustus knew well enough that those figs were poisoned, at any rate from the moment that I dashed one of them from your lips, Olaf. Well, I have made a bitterer enemy than before, that's all. They say that by nature's rule mother and child must love each other, but it is a lie. I tell you it's a lie. From the time he was tiny I hated that boy, though not half as much as he has hated me. You are thinking to yourself that this is because our ambitions clash like meeting swords, and that from them spring these fires of hate. It is not so. The hate is native to our hearts, and will only end when one of us lies dead at the other's hand. Terrible words, Augusta. Yes, but true. Truth is always terrible in Byzantium. Olaf, take those drugged fruits and set them in the drawer of yonder table. Lock it and guard the key, lest they should poison other honest animals. I obeyed and returned to my station. She looked at me and said, "I grow weary of the sight of you standing there like a statue of the Roman Mars, with your sword half hidden beneath your cloak. And what's more, I hate this hall. It reeks of Constantine and his drink and lies. Oh, he's vile, and for my sins God has made me his mother, unless indeed he was changed at birth, as I've been told, though I could never prove it. Give me your hand and help me to rise. So I thank you. Now follow me. We'll sit for a while in my private chamber, where alone I can be happy, since the Emperor never comes there. Nay, talk not of duty. You have no guards to set or change tonight. Follow me. I have secret business of which I would talk with you. So she went, and I followed through doors that opened mysteriously at our approach and shut mysteriously behind us, till I found myself in a little room, half lighted only, that I had never seen before. It was a scented and beautiful place, in one corner of which a white statue gleamed, that of a Venus kissing Cupid, who folded one wing about her head, and through the open window place the moonlight shone and floated the murmur of the sea. The double doors were shut, for aught I knew locked, and with her own hands Irene drew the curtains over them. Near the open window, to which there was no balcony, stood a couch. Sit yonder, Olaf, she said, for here there is no ceremony. Here we are but man and woman. I obeyed, while she busied herself with the curtains. Then she came and sat herself down on the couch also, leaning against the end of it in such a fashion that she could watch me in the moonlight. Olaf, she said, after she had looked at me a while, rather strangely, as I thought, for the colour came and went upon her face, which in that light seemed quite young again and wonderfully beautiful. Olaf, you are a very brave man. There are hundreds in your service braver, Empress. Cowards do not take to soldiering. I could tell you a different story, Olaf, but it was not of this kind of courage that I talked. It was of that which made you offer to eat the poisoned fig in place of Constantine. Why did you do so? It is true that, as things have happened, he'll remember it in your favour, for I'll say this of him, he never forgets one who has saved him from harm, any more than he forgets one who has harmed him. But if you had eaten, you would have died. And then how could he have rewarded you? Empress, when I took my oath of office, I swore to protect both the Augustus and the Augusta, even with my life. I was fulfilling my oath, that is all. You are a strange man, as well as a brave man, to interpret oaths so strictly. If you will do as much as this for one who is nothing to you, and who has never paid you a gold piece, how much, I wonder, would you do for one whom you love? I could offer no more than my life for such a one, Empress, could I? Someone told me, it may have been you, Olaf, or another, that once you did more, challenging a heathen god for the sake of the one you loved, and defeating him. It was added that this was for a man, but that I do not believe. Doubtless it was for the sake of Iduna the Fair, of whom you have spoken to me, whom it seems you cannot forget, although she was faithless to you. It is said that the best way to hold love is to be faithless to him who loves, and in truth I believe it, she added bitterly. You are mistaken, Empress. It was to be avenged on him for the life of Steinar, my foster brother, which he had taken in sacrifice, that I dared Odin and hewed his holy statue to pieces with this sword. Of Steinar, whom Iduna betrayed as she betrayed me, bringing one to death and the other to shame. At least, had it not been for this Iduna, you would never have given battle to the great god of the North, and thus brought his curse upon you. For, Olaf, those gods live. They are devils. Whether Odin is or is not, I do not fear his curse, Empress. Yet it will find you out before all is done, or so I think. Look you, pagan blood still runs in me, and Christian though I am, I would not dare one of the great gods of Greece and Rome. I'd leave that to the priests. Do you fear nothing, Olaf? I think nothing at all, since I hewed off Odin's head and came away unscathed." "Then you are a man to my liking, Olaf." She paused, looking at me even more strangely than before, till I turned my eyes, indeed, and stared out at the sea, wishing that I were in it, or anywhere away from this lovely and imperious woman whom I was sworn to obey in all things. "Olaf," she said presently, "you have served me well of late. Is there any reward that you would ask, and if so, what? Anything that I can give is yours, unless," she added hastily, "the gift will take you away from Constantinople and from me." "Yes, Augusta," I answered, still staring out at the sea. "In the prison yonder is an old bishop named Barnabas of Egypt, who was set upon by other bishops at the council while you were away, and well nigh beaten to death. I ask that he may be freed and restored to his diocese with honour." "Barnabas!" she replied sharply. "I know the man. He is an iconoclast, and therefore my enemy. Only this morning I signed an order that he should be kept in confinement till he died, here or elsewhere. Still," she went on, "though I would sooner give you a province, have your gift, for I can refuse you nothing. Barnabas shall be freed and restored to his see with honour. I have said." Now I began to thank her, but she stopped me, saying, "Have done. Another time you can talk to me of heretics with whom you have made friends, but I, who hear enough of such, would have no more of them to night." So I grew silent and still stared out at the sea. Indeed, I was wondering in my mind whether I dared ask to leave to depart, for I felt her eyes burning on me and grew much afraid. Suddenly I heard a sound, a gentle sound of rustling silk, and in another instant I felt Irene's arms clasped about me and Irene's head laid upon my knee. Yes, she was kneeling before me, sobbing, and her proud head was resting on my knee. The diadem she wore had fallen from it, and her tresses, breaking loose, flowed to the ground, and lay there gleaming like gold in the moonlight. She looked up, and her face was that of a weeping saint. "Dost understand?" she whispered. Now despair took me, which I knew full well would soon be followed by madness. Then came a thought. "Yes," I said hoarsely. "I understand that you grieve over that matter of the Augustus and the poisoned figs, and would pray me to keep silent. Have no fear. My lips are sealed, but for this I cannot answer, though perhaps as he had drunk so much—" "Fool!" she whispered. "Is it thus that an empress pleads with her captain to keep silence?" Then she drew herself up, a wonderful look upon her face that had grown suddenly white, a fire in her upturned eyes, and for the second time kissed me upon the lips. I took her in my arms and kissed her back. For an instant my mind swam. Then in my soul I cried for help, and strength came to me. Rising, I lifted her as though she were a child, and stood her on her feet. I said, "Hearken, Empress, before destruction falls. I do understand now, though a moment ago I did not, who never thought it possible that the Queen of the world could look with favour upon one so humble." "Love takes no account of rank," she murmured, "and that kiss of yours upon my lips is more to me than the empire of the world." "Yet hearken," I answered. "There is another wall between us which may not be climbed." "Man, what is this wall? Is it a named woman? Are you sworn to the memory of that Iduna who is more fair than I? Or is it perchance her of the necklace?" "Neither. Iduna is dead to me. She of the necklace is but a dream. The wall is that of your own faith." On this night, 7 days ago, I was baptized a Christian." "Well, what of it? This draws us near." "Study the sayings of your sacred book, Empress, and you will find that it thrusts us apart." Now she coloured to her hair, and a kind of madness took her. "Am I to be preached to by you?" she asked. "I preach to myself, Augusta, who need it greatly, not to you, who mayhap do not need it." "Hating me as you do, why should you need it? You are the worst of hypocrites, who would veil your hate under a priest's robe." "Have you no pity, Irene? When did I say that I hated you? Moreover, if I had hated you, should I—" and I ceased. "I do not know what you would or would not have done," she answered coldly. "I think that Constantine is right and that you must be what is called a saint, and if so, saints are best in heaven, especially when they know too much on earth. Give me that sword of yours." I drew the sword, saluted with it, and gave it to her. "It is a heavy weapon," she said. "Whence came it?" "From the same grave as the necklace, Augusta." "Ah, the necklace that your dream woman wore. Well, go to seek her in the land of dreams," and she lifted the sword. "Your pardon, Augusta, but you are about to strike with the blunt edge, which may wound but will not kill." She laughed a little, very nervously, and, turning the sword round in her hand, said: "Truly you are the strangest of men. Ah, I thank you. Now I have it right. Do you understand, Sir Saint, what sort of a story I must tell of you after I have struck? Do you understand that not only are you about to die, but that infamy will be poured upon your name, and that your body will be dragged through the streets and thrown to the dogs, with the city offal? Answer, I say, answer." "I understand that you must cause these things to be done for your own sake, Augusta, and I do not complain. Lies matter nothing to me, who journey to the land of truth, where there are some whom I would meet again. Be advised by me. Strike here, where the neck joins the shoulder, holding the sword slantwise, for there even a woman's blow will serve to sever the great artery." "I cannot. Kill yourself, Olaf." "A week ago I'd have fallen on the sword, but now, by the rule of our faith, in such a cause I may not. My blood must be upon your hands, for which I grieve, knowing that no other road is open to you. Augusta, if it is worth anything to you, take my full forgiveness for the deed, and with it my thanks for all the goodness you have shown to me, but most for your woman's favour. In after years, perhaps, when death draws near to you also, if you ever remember Olaf, your faithful servant, you will understand much it is not fitting that I should say. Give me one moment to make my peace with Heaven as to certain kisses. Then strike hard and swiftly, and as you strike, scream for your guards and women. Your wit will do the rest." She lifted the sword, while, after a moment's prayer, I bared my neck of the silk robe. Then she let it fall again, gasping, and said: "Tell me first, for I am curious. Are you no man, or have you forsworn women, as do the monks?" "Not I, Augusta. Had I lived, some day I might have married, who would have wished to leave children behind me, since in our law marriage is allowed. Forget not your promise as to the Bishop Barnabas, who, I fear, will weep over this seeming fall of mine." "So you would marry, would you?" she said, as one who speaks to herself, then thought a while and handed me back the sword. "Olaf," she went on, "you have made me feel as I never felt before, ashamed, utterly ashamed. And though I learn to hate you, as it well mayhap I shall, know that I shall always honour you." Then she sank down upon the couch and, hiding her face in her hands, wept bitterly. It was at this moment that I went very near to loving Irene. I think she must have felt something of what was passing in my mind, for suddenly she looked up and said, "Give me that jewel," and she pointed to the diadem on the floor, "and help me to order my hair. My hands shake." "Nay," I said as I gave her the crown. "Of that wine I drink no more. I dare not touch you. You grow too dear." "For those words," she whispered. "Go in safety, and remember that from Irene you have naught to fear, as I know well I have naught to fear from you, O Prince among men." So presently I went. On the following morning, as I sat in my office at the prison, setting all things in order for whoever should succeed me, Martina entered, as she had done before. "How came you here unannounced?" I asked when she was seated. "By virtue of this," she answered, holding up her hand and showing on it a ring I knew. It was the signet of the Empress. I saluted the seal, saying, "And for what purpose, Martina? To order me to bonds or death?" "To bonds or death?" she exclaimed innocently. "What can our good Olaf have done worthy of such woes? Nay, I come to free one from bonds and perhaps from death, namely, a certain heretic bishop who is named Barnabas. Here is the order for his release, signed by the Augusta's hand and sealed with her seal, under which he is at liberty to bide in Constantinople while he will, and to return to his bishopric in Egypt when it pleases him. Also, if he holds that any have harmed him, he may make complaint, and it shall be considered without delay." I took the parchment, read it, and laid it on the table, saying, "The commands of the Empress shall be done. Is there aught else, Martina?" "Yes. Tomorrow morning you will be relieved of your office, and another governor, Stauracius and Aetius are quarrelling as to his name, will take your place." "And I?" "You will resume your post as captain of the private guard, only with the rank of a full general of the army. But that I told you yesterday. It is now confirmed." I said nothing, but a groan I could not choke broke from my lips. "You do not seem as pleased as you might be, Olaf. Tell me, now, at what hour did you leave the palace last night? While waiting for my mistress to summon me, I fell asleep in the vestibule of the anteroom, and when I awoke and went into that room, I found there the gold broidered silk robe you wore, cast upon the ground, and your armour gone. I know not what was the hour, Martina, and speak no more to me, I pray, of that accursed womanish robe, which you treated but ill, Olaf, for it is spotted as though with blood. The Augustus spilt some wine over it." "Aye, my mistress told me the story. Also that of how you would have eaten the poisoned fig which you snatched from the lips of Constantine." "And what else did your mistress tell you, Martina?" "Not much, Olaf. She was in a very strange mood last night, and while I combed her hair, which, Olaf, was as tangled as though a man had handled it," and she looked at me till I coloured to the eyes, "and undid her diadem that was set on it all awry, she spoke to me of marriage." "Of marriage!" I gasped. "Certainly. Did I not speak the word with clearness? Of marriage." "With whom, Martina?" "Oh, grow not jealous before there is need, Olaf. She made no mention of the name of our future divine master, for whosoever can rule Irene, if such a one lives, will certainly rule us also. All she said was that she wished she could find some man to guide, guard, and comfort her, who grew lonely amidst many troubles and hoped for more sons than Constantine." What sort of a man, Martina? This Emperor Charlemagne or some other king? No. She vowed that she had seen enough of princes who were murderers and liars, all of them, and that what she desired was one of good birth, no more, brave, honest, and not a fool. I asked her, too, what she would have him like to look upon. And what did she say to that, Martina? Oh, she said that he must be tall and under 40, fair-haired and bearded, since she loved not these shaven effeminates who look half woman and half priest. One who had known more and yet was no ruffler. A person of an open mind who had learned and could learn more. Well, now that I think of it, by all the saints, yes, much such as a man as you are, Olaf. Then she may find them in plenty, I said, with an uneasy laugh. Do you think so? Well, she did not. Neither did I. Indeed, she pointed out that this was her trouble. Among the great of the earth she knew no such man, and if she sought lower, then would come jealousies and war. Indeed, there would. Doubtless you showed her that this was so, Martina. Not at all, Olaf. I asked her of what use it was to be an empress if she could not please her own heart in this matter of a husband, which is one important to a woman. I said also, as for such fears, that a secret marriage might be thought of, which is an honest business that could be declared when occasion came. And what did she answer to that, Martina? She fell into high good humour, called me a faithful and clever friend, gave me a handsome jewel, told me that she would have a mission for me on the morrow, doubtless that which I now fulfil, for I have heard of no other, said, notwithstanding all the trouble as to the Augustus and his threats, that she was sure she would sleep better than she had done for nights, kissed me on both cheeks and flung herself upon her knees at her praying stool, where I left her. But why are you looking so sad, Olaf? Oh, I know not, save that I find life difficult and full of pitfalls which it is hard to escape. Martina rested her elbows on the table and her chin upon her little hand, staring me full in the face with her quick eyes that pierced like nails. Olaf, she said, your star shines bright above you. Keep your eyes fixed thereon and follow it, and never think about the pitfalls. It may lead you I know not where. To heaven, perhaps, I suggested. Well, you did not fear to go thither when you would have eaten the poisoned fig last night. To heaven, perchance, but by a royal road. Whatever you may think of some others, marriage is an honourable estate, my Christian friend, especially if a man marries well. And now goodbye. We shall meet again at the palace, whither you will repair tomorrow morning. Not before, since I am engaged in directing the furnishment of your new quarters in the right wing, and though the workmen labour all night, they will not be finished until then. Goodbye, General Olaf. Your servant Martina salutes you and your star. And she curtsied before me until her knees almost touched the ground. End of chapter 4. Book 2, Chapter 5 of The Wanderer's Necklace by H. Rider Haggard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5 Ave Post Secula. It comes back to me that on the following day my successor in the governorship of the jail, who he was I know not now, arrived, and that to him in due form I handed over my offices and duties. Before I did so, however, I made it my care to release Barnabas, I think on the previous evening. In his cell I read the Augusta's warrant to the old bishop. "How was it obtained, son?" he asked. "For know that having so many enemies on this small matter of image worship, I expected to die in this place. Now it seems that I am free, and may even return to my charge in Egypt." "The Empress granted it to me as a favour, Father," I answered. "I told her that you were from the north, like myself." He studied me with his shrewd blue eyes, and said, "It seems strange to me that so great and unusual a boon should be granted for such a reason, seeing that better men than I am have suffered banishment and worse woes for less cause than I have given. What did you pay the Empress for this favour, son Olaf?" "Nothing, Father." "Is it so, Olaf? A dream has come to me about you, and in that dream I saw you walk through a great fire and emerge unscathed, save for the singeing of your lips and hair." "Perhaps they were singed, Father. Otherwise I am unburned, though what will happen to me in the future I do not know, for my dangers seem great." "In my dream you triumphed over all of them, Olaf, and also met with some reward, even in this life, though now I know not what it was. Yes, and triumph you shall, my son in Christ. Fear nothing, even when the storm clouds sweep about your head and the lightnings blind your eyes. I say fear nothing, for you have friends whom you cannot see. I ask no more, even under the seal of confession, since there are secrets which it is not well to learn. Who knows, I might go mad, or torture might draw from me words I would not speak. Therefore keep your own counsel, son, and confess to God alone." "What will you do now, Father?" I asked. "Return to Egypt?" "Nay, not yet awhile. It comes to me that I must bide here for a space, which under this pardon I have liberty to do, but to what end I cannot say. Later on I shall return, if God wills so. I go to dwell with good folk who are known to me, and from time to time will let you hear where I may be found, if you should need my help or counsel." Then I led him to the gates, and having given him a witnessed copy of his warrant of release, bade him farewell for that time, making it known to the guards and certain priests who lingered there that any who molest him must answer for it to the Augusta. Thus we parted. Having handed over the keys to the prison, I walked to the palace unattended, being minded to take up my duties there unnoticed. But this was not to be. As I entered the palace gate, a sentry called out something, and a messenger, who seemed to be in waiting, departed at full speed. Then the sentry, saluting, told me that his orders were that I must stand a while, he knew not why. Presently I discovered, for across the square within the gates marched a full general's guard, whereof the officer also saluted and prayed me to come with him. I went, wondering if I was to be given in charge, and by him, surrounded with this pompous guard, was led to my new quarters, which were more splendid than I could have dreamed. Here the guard left me, and presently other officers appeared, some of them old comrades of my own, asking for orders, of which of course I had none to give. Also, within an hour I was summoned to a council of generals to discuss some matter of a war in which the Empire was engaged. By such means as these it was conveyed to me that I had become a great man, or at any rate one in the way of growing great. That afternoon, when according to my old custom I was making my round of the guards, I met the Augusta upon the main terrace, surrounded by a number of ministers and courtiers. I saluted and would have passed on, but she bade one of her eunuchs call me to her, so I came and stood before her. "We greet you, General Olaf," she said. "Where have you been all this long while? Oh, I remember, at the state prison, as its governor, of which office you are now relieved at your own request. Well, the palace welcomes you again, for when you are here, all within know themselves safe." Thus she spoke, her great eyes searching my face the while. then bowed her head in token of dismissal. I saluted again and began to step backwards according to the rule, whereon she motioned me to stand. Then she began to make a laugh of me to the painted throng about her. "Say, nobles and ladies," she said, "did any of you ever see such a man? We address him as best we may, and we have reason to believe that he understands our language. Yet not one word does he vouchsafe to us in answer. There he stands like a soldier cut in iron who moves by springs, with never an 'I thank you' or a 'good day' on his lips. Doubtless he would reprove us all, who he holds talk too much, being, as we have all heard, a man of stern morality who has no tenderness for human foibles. By the way, General Olaf, a rumour has reached us that you have forsaken doubt and become a Christian. Is this true?" "It is true, Augusta." "Then if as a pagan you were a man of iron, what will you be as a Christian, we wonder? One hard as diamond, no less. Yet we are glad of this tidings, as all good servants of the Church must be, since henceforth our friendship will be closer and we value you. General, you must be received publicly into the bosom of the Faith. It will be an encouragement to others to follow your example. Perhaps, as you have served us so well in many wars and as an officer of our guard, we ourselves will be your godmother. The matter shall be considered by us. What have you to answer to it?" "Nothing," I replied, "save that when the Augusta has considered of the matter, I will consider my answer." At this the courtiers tittered, and instead of growing angry, as I thought she might, Irene burst out laughing. "Truly we were wrong," she said, "to provoke you to open your mouth, General, for when you do so, like that red sword you wear, your tongue is sharp, if somewhat heavy. Tell us, General, are your new quarters to your taste? And before you reply, know that we inspected them ourselves, and having a liking for such tasks, attended to their furnishment. This done you will see in the northern style, which we think somewhat cold and heavy, like your sword and tongue." "If the Augusta asks me," I said, "the quarters are too fine for a single soldier. The 2 rooms where I dwelt before were sufficient." "A single soldier! Well, that is a fault which can be remedied. You should marry, General Olaf." "When I find any woman who wishes to marry me and whom I wish to marry, I will obey the Augusta's commands." "So be it, General. Only remember that first we must approve the lady. Venture not, General, to share those new quarters of yours with any lady whom we do not approve." Then, followed by the Court, she turned and walked away, and I went about my business, wondering what was the meaning of all this guarded and half bitter talk. The next event that returns to me clearly is that of my public acceptance as a Christian in the great Cathedral of St. Sophia, which must have taken place not very long after this meeting upon the terrace. I know that by every means in my power I had striven, though without avail, to escape this ceremony, pointing out that I could be publicly received into the body of the Church at any chapel where there was a priest and a congregation of a dozen humble folk. But this the Empress would not allow. The reason she gave was her desire that my conversion should be proclaimed throughout the city, that other pagans, of whom there were thousands, might follow my example. Yet I think she had another which she did not avow. It was that I might be made known in public as a man of importance, whom it pleased her to honour. On the morning of this rite, Martina came to acquaint me with its details, and told me that the Empress would be present at the cathedral in state, making her progress thither in her golden chariot, drawn by the famed milk-white steeds. I, it seemed, was to ride after the chariot in my general's uniform, which was splendid enough, followed by a company of guards and surrounded by chanting priests. The Patriarch himself, no less a person, was to receive me and some other converts, and the cathedral would be filled with all the great ones of Constantinople. I asked whether Irene intended to be my godmother, as she had threatened. "Not so," replied Martina. "On that point she has changed her mind." "So much the better," I said. "But why?" "There is a canon of the Church, Olaf, which forbids intermarriage between a godparent and his or her godchild," she replied dryly. "Whether this canon has come to the Augusta's memory or not, I cannot say. It may be so." "Who, then, is to be my godmother?" I asked hurriedly, leaving the problem of Irene's motives undiscussed. "I am, by the written imperial decree delivered to me not an hour ago." "You, Martina? You who are younger than myself by many years?" "Yes, I. The Augusta has just explained to me that as we seem to be such very good friends, and to talk together so much alone, doubtless she supposed upon matters of religion, there could be no person more suitable than such a good Christian as myself to fill that holy office." "What do you mean, Martina?" I asked bluntly. "I mean, Olaf," she replied, turning away her head and speaking in a strained voice, "that where you are concerned, the Augusta of late has done me the honour to be somewhat jealous of me." "Well, of a godmother no one need be jealous. The Augusta is a clever woman, Olaf." "I do not quite understand," I said. "Why should the Augusta be jealous of you?" "There is no reason at all, Olaf, except that, as it happens, she is jealous of every woman who comes near to you, and she knows that we are intimate and that you trust me, well, more perhaps than you trust her. Oh, I assure you that of late you have not spoken to any woman under 50 unnoted and unreported. Many eyes watch you, Olaf." "Then they might find better employment. But tell me outright, Martina, what is the meaning of all this?" "Surely even a wooden-headed Northman can guess, Olaf." She glanced round her to make sure that we were alone in the great apartment of my quarters and that the doors were shut, then went on, almost in a whisper: "My mistress is wondering whether or no she will marry again, and if so, whether she will choose a certain somewhat over-virtuous Christian soldier as a second husband. And yet she has not made up her mind. Moreover, even if she had, nothing could be done at present or until the question of the struggle between her and her son for power is settled in this way or in that. Therefore, at worst or at best, that soldier has yet a while of single life left to him, say a month or two." "Then during that month or two perhaps he would be wise to travel," I suggested. "Perhaps, if he were a fool who would run away from fortune, and if he could get leave of absence, which in this case is impossible. To attempt such a journey without would mean his death. No, if he is wise, that soldier will bide where he is and await events, possessing his soul in patience, as a good Christian should do. Now, as your godmother, I must instruct you in this service. Look not so troubled. It really is most simple. You know Stauracius, the eunuch, is to be your godfather, which is very fortunate for you, since, although he looks on you with doubt and jealousy, to blind or murder his own godson would cause too much scandal even in Constantinople. As a special mark of grace, also, the Bishop Barnabas of Egypt will be allowed to assist in the ceremony, because it was he who snatched your soul from the burning. Moreover, since the sacrament is to be administered afterwards, he has been commanded to attend here to receive your confession in the chapel of the palace and within an hour. You know that this day being the feast of St. Michael and all angels, you will be received in the name of Michael, a high one well fitted to a warlike saint, though I think I shall still call you Olaf. So farewell, my godson-to-be, until we meet at the cathedral, where I shall shine in the reflected light of all your virtues." Then she sighed, laughed a little, and glided away. In due course a priest of the chapel came to summon me there, saying that the Bishop Barnabas awaited me. I went and made my confession, though in truth I had little to tell him that he did not already know. Afterwards the good old man, who by now was quite recovered from his hurts and imprisonment, accompanied me to my quarters, where we ate together. He told me that before he attended in the chapel he had been received by the Empress, who had spoken to him very kindly, making light of their difference of opinion as to images, and with her own mouth confirmed him in his bishopric, even hinting at his possible promotion. "This, my son," he added, "I am well aware I owe to your good offices." I asked him if he would return at once to Upper Egypt, where he had his bishopric. "No, my son," he answered, "not yet awhile. The truth is that there have arrived here the chief man in my diocese and his daughter. He is a descendant of the old Pharaohs of the Egyptians, who lives near the second cataract of the Nile, almost on the borders of Ethiopia, whither the accursed children of Mahomet have not yet forced their way. He is still a great man among the Egyptians, who look upon him as their lawful prince. His mission here is to try to plan a new war upon the followers of the Prophet, who he holds might be assailed by the Empire at the mouths of the Nile, while he attacked them with his Egyptians from the south." Now I grew interested, who had always grieved over the loss of Egypt to the Empire, and asked what was this prince's name. "Magas, my son, and his daughter is named Heliodore. Ah, she is such a woman as I would see you wed, beautiful indeed, and good and true as she is beautiful, with a high spirit also, such as befits her ancient blood. Mayhap you will note her in the cathedral. Nay, I forgot, not there, but afterwards in this palace, since it is the command of the Empress, to whom I have been speaking of their matters, that these two should come to dwell here for a while. After that I hope we shall all return to Egypt together, though Magas, being on a secret mission, does not travel under his own name, but is a merchant." Suddenly he paused and began to stare at my throat. "Is aught wrong with my armour, Father?" I asked. "No, son. I was looking at that trinket which you wear. Of course I have noted it before, but never closely. It is strange, very strange." "What is strange, Father?" "Only that I have seen another like it." "I dare say you have," I answered, laughing, "for when I would not give this to the Augusta, it pleased her to have it copied." "No, no, I mean in Egypt, and what is more, a story hung to the jewel." "On whom? Where? What story?" I asked eagerly. "Oh, I cannot stay to tell you now. Moreover, your mind should be fixed upon immortal crowns, not on earthly necklaces. I must be gone. Nay, stay me not. I am already late. Do you get to your knees and pray till your godparents come to fetch you." Then, in spite of all I could do to keep him, he went, muttering, "Strange, exceedingly strange," and leaving me quite unfit for prayer. An hour later I was riding through the streets of the mighty city, clad in shining armour. As the season was that of October, in which the feast of St. Michael falls, we wore cloaks, although, the day being warm, they were little needed. Mine was of some fine white stuff, with a red cross broidered on the right shoulder. Stauracius, the eunuch and great minister, who had been ordered to act as my godfather, rode alongside of me on a mule, because he dared not mount a horse, sweating beneath his thick robe of office, and, as I heard from time to time, cursing me, his godson, and all this ceremony beneath his breath. On my other hand was my godmother, Martina, riding an Arab mare, which she did well enough, having been brought up to horsemanship on the plains of Greece. Her mood was varied, for now she laughed at the humour of the scene, and now she was sad almost to tears. The streets were lined with thousands of the pleasure-loving people of the city, who had come out to see the show of the Empress going in state to the cathedral. They were gathered even on the flat housetops and in the entrances to the public buildings and open places. But the glory of the sight was centred not about me, with my escort of guards and chanting priests, but in Irene's self. Preceded and followed by glittering regiments of soldiers, she drove in her famous golden chariot, drawn by 8 milk-white steeds, each of which was led by a bejewelled noble. Her dress was splendid and covered with sparkling gems, and on her yellow hair she wore a crown. As she went, the multitudes shouted their welcome, and she bowed to right and left in answer to the shouts. Now and again, however, bands of armed men, clad in a dress of peculiar colour, emerged from side streets and hooted, crying, "Where is the Augustus? Give us the Augustus. We will not be ruled by a woman and her eunuchs." These men were of the party of Constantine and set on by him. Once, indeed, there was a tumult, for some of them tried to bar the road till they were driven away, leaving a few dead or wounded behind them. But still the crowd shouted and the Empress bowed as though nothing had happened, and thus by a somewhat winding route we came to St. Sophia. The Augusta entered, and presently I and those with me followed her into the wonderful cathedral. I see it now, not in particular, but as a whole, with its endless columns, its aisles and apses, and its glittering mosaics shining through the holy gloom, across which shot bars of light from the high window places. All the great place was full of the noblest in the city, rank upon rank of them, come hither to see the Empress in her glory at the great feast of St. Michael, which year by year she attended thus. At the altar waited the Patriarch in his splendid robes, attended by many bishops and priests, among them Barnabas of Egypt. The service began, I and some other converts standing together near to the altar rail. The details of it do not return to me. Sweet voices sang, censers gave forth their incense, banners waved, and images of the saints, standing everywhere, smiled upon us fixedly. Some of us were baptized, and some who had already been baptized were received publicly into the fellowship of the Church, I among them. My godfather, Stauracius, a deacon prompting him, and my godmother, Martina, spoke certain words on my behalf, and I also spoke certain words which I had learned. The splendid Patriarch, a sour-faced man with a slight squint, gave me his especial blessing. The Bishop Barnabas, upon whom, as I noticed, the Patriarch was always careful to turn his back, offered up a prayer. My godfather and godmother embraced me, Stauracius smacking the air at a distance, for which I was grateful, and Martina touching me gently with her lips upon the brow. The Empress smiled upon me, and, as I passed her, patted me on the shoulder. Then the sacrament was celebrated, whereof the Empress partook first, next we converts and our godparents, and afterwards a number of the congregation. It was over at last. The Augusta and her attendants marched down the cathedral towards the great western doors. Priests followed, and among them we converts, whom the people applauded openly. Looking to right and left of me, for I was weary of keeping my gaze fixed upon the floor, presently I caught sight of a face whilst as yet it was far away. It seemed to draw me, I knew not why. The face was that of a woman, stood by an old and stately-looking man with a white beard, the last of a line of worshippers next to the aisle along which the procession passed, and I saw that she was young and fair. Down the long, resounding aisle the procession marched slowly. Now I was nearer to the face and perceived that it was lovely as some rich-hued flower. The large eyes were dark and soft as a deer's. The complexion, too, was somewhat dark, as though the sun had kissed it. The lips were red and curving, and about them played a little smile that was full of mystery, as the eyes were full of thought and tenderness. The figure was delicate and rounded, but not so very tall. All these things and others I noted. Yet it was not by them that I was drawn and held, but rather because I knew this lady. She was the woman of whom, years ago, I had dreamed on the night on which I broke into the Wanderer's tomb at Ar. Never for one moment did I doubt me of this truth. I was sure. It did not even need, while she turned to whisper something to her companion, that the cloak she wore should open a little, revealing on her breast a necklace of emerald beetles, separated by inlaid shells of pale and ancient gold. She was watching the procession with interest, yet somewhat idly, when she caught sight of me, whom, from where she stood, she could scarcely have seen before. Of a sudden her face grew doubtful and troubled, like to that of one who has just received some hurt. She saw the ornament about my neck. She turned pale, and had she not gripped the arm of the man beside her, would, I think, have fallen. Then her eyes caught mine, and fate had us in its net. She leaned forward, gazing all her soul in those dark eyes, and I too gazed and gazed. The great cathedral vanished with its glittering crowds. The sound of chanting and of feet that marched died away from my ears. In place of these I saw a mighty columned temple and two stone figures, taller than pines, seated on a plain, and through the moonlit silence heard a sweet voice murmuring, "Farewell, for this life, farewell." Now we were near to each other. Now I was passing her, I who might not stay. My hand brushed hers, and oh! it was as though I had drunk a cup of wine. A spirit entered into me, and bending, I whispered in her ear, speaking in the Latin tongue, since Greek, which all knew, I did not dare use. Ave post secula, greeting after the ages. I saw her bosom heave, yes, and heard her whisper back, Ave. So she knew me also. End of chapter 5.